Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Garden Cinema. I am so pleased to see how popular these events are. So thank you so much for coming, and we're so pleased that clearly there is interest out there. I'm delighted to welcome our two guests, Christina and Philip, and what I'll do is I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. So Christina, if you want to go first.
Hello. Lovely to be here. Such a packed screen. Me and Philip were discussing it earlier and was like, well, who's going to be interested? It's going to be us and Abla and maybe another couple of people. So it's nice. It's nice to see that people are really interested. So my name is Christina Papasotiriou and I am the senior programmer for Raindance Film Festival. Previously, I was the alternative programming manager for Genesis Cinema for many years, and I am also a collaborator of EFN Short Film Festival that is that has its home here at the Garden Cinema, and yeah, that's about me, I guess. Loads of different bits and bobs still, but yeah, that's a thing in there.
Thank you very much. Philip, how about you?
Yes, my name's Philip Ilson. I'm currently the co-director. I was the artistic director of the London Short Film Festival, which I set up 20 years ago in 2004. So it's been a long journey over 20 years building the festival from its very small beginnings, but we can perhaps talk a bit about that and how these things start up. And I've done loads of other bits and pieces. I was the shorts film programmer at the BFI London Film Festival between, I think, 2006 until last year's festival, 2022. And then I've programmed at East End Film Festival, which doesn't exist anymore. A film festival in Jersey that doesn't exist anymore. Not because of me, but because these things come and go. So it's been great to keep the London Short Film Festival going all those years, and hopefully still going strong and still growing. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So I don't know how many of you, actually let's have a show of hands. How many of you were here for the last event we did with the two producers? Okay, so not that many actually. So how we did it was I would ask a few questions. It's all very informal, and then I will leave you really to ask the questions you have for our guests. And the idea is very much for you to get something out of this, find out a bit more about the industry, find out a bit more about the various roles, the various jobs, the various sectors, how things work, and any other questions you might have. So my first question really to both of you is quite simple, is can you describe a little bit what your jobs are? So what's an average day in the life of, I guess, a festival programmer and festival director? So who wants to go first?
Oh, I shall bite it. So, film programming can be a little bit solitary sometimes. As you can imagine, it involves a lot of watching films. But of course, like how that comes about has different forms. So specifically for Raindance Film Festival, I program feature films rather than shorts. And the two ways that we acquire films is through submissions, through a platform called Film Freeway anyway, that just like anyone can submit whatever content they have for a fee. And the other way is through our own research. So that would mean that we will be attending film festivals in person or online, or just researching the lineups, or we will be in touch with sales agents who will be the primary custodian for a film. And again, like researching the lineups they have. So like these sales agents and these film festivals might be European, American, or from absolutely anywhere in the world. And like a film programmer's job is essentially to keep relationships with these institutions, and as well as film productions, film production companies, and so on and so forth. And yeah, you kind of have, I guess, a remit, and you your festival has a specific identity, and as a programmer, of course, you know, like you have very much what you want your festival to look, how fun or how sad you want it to be, you know, how pretentious or how not. Because, you know, that of course it's you want to have a very specific output. You know, of course, at the moment, and you know, always diversity is a big issue. So, you know, like finding really great films from very diverse voices is very important. So yeah, I guess, you know, like a normal day will be, you know, just like researching and talking with people and seeing, you know, like what is out there, and researching about the films themselves, the filmmakers, the producers, the actors, taking into consideration. So Raindance at the moment is focusing very much on supporting debut filmmakers, and not just first time, like second time or third time as well. So it's always, you know, like we're looking into their education, you know, like what shorts they've done, what their shorts have been, you know, like like have they been to Raindance before? Have they been to other festivals before? Have they been to London Short Film Festival before? And yeah, it's kind of like, you know, like it's a vetting process, and we can get a slight idea of if that person might be, you know, like have interesting work for us. And then, yeah, that's it. Then I guess you proceed to watch the films, and that is the tedious process that requires a lot of time. So, yeah, it's kind of, you watch a film, you maybe watch, if it's really great, you definitely finish it. But if you feel that it's not quite right, unfortunately, you have to be very tough with yourself. And even if the film is good, but it's not right for the festival, you just need to really suck it up. It's like, okay, I need to stop this. And you can like, stop watching it, even though you enjoyed it a lot, and move on to the next one. And that's kind of like what you do for 8, 9, 10 hours. And you go through, I don't know, like hopefully in a day, I usually aim for 10 films. Features.
It's not nothing personal.
Nope. But yeah, I guess you know, in a programming day for me, that's more or less how it looks like. Of course, you know, there's the festival proper when you'll have the Q&As and it's go time. But yeah, that's just not a typical day. So I guess that's for another question.
Thank you very much. And Philip, I mean, you also are a programmer, but specifically you're here as well as the ex-artistic director, now the co-director of...
I mean, we basically, the festival's been through a lot of changes over the years, but just in terms of that, it's interesting hearing you speak about how you program, because with features, I think it is very different to shorts. You know, we rely 90% on the submissions that come in, and for the London Short Film Festival, we've just closed submissions this year on Monday, and we had just over 5,000. Yes, we do look at what's in Berlinale, what's in Cannes. You know, you don't want to just replicate those festivals, but, you know, a lot of the times those shorts that are premiering at those festivals are really strong, so you want to see those films and see if they're suitable for the festival and call them in. But a lot of the time, you know, you're kind of relying on the submissions that come through. And obviously you can watch a lot more than 10 films in a day. You can watch 100 films in a day.
And you don't have to stop it as well. If you like, you just keep on
lengthwise,
going.
it can be 1 minute. I've watched many 1 minute films, or we have a cut-off limit of 45 minutes, but very few films are that long. You know, the majority are sort of anything between 8 to 10 to 20 minutes, 22 minutes, less, you know, the longer sort of end for short films. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of my daily role, I mean, we're not a very big team. It's me. I have a co-director now that's basically, over the years I've always had kind of a business partner. Because that area isn't really my sort of world, the funding, the sponsorship. So it's been good working with people that come and work with me as a partner and deal more with that stuff. So yeah, the last couple of years we've had this festival director role. We've had a couple of people come through that hasn't really worked out, but our marketing person, Charlotte, who has been marketing on the festival for 3 years, she's now stepped up to be the co-director because she very much understands the funding landscape. She's had a lot of experience at Sheffield Docfest, at Screen Scotland, with fundraising. So, and yeah, she enjoys programming as well, so she's a little bit involved in that side. But also there's, the other parts of the festival. The festival has an industry program. The festival has lots of retrospectives, special events, crossover events with films and music, and I'm very much involved in putting those together as well, but usually with other people that want to come on board to do a partner screening or to do a special screening. We get lots of pitches from curators and film collectives that want to have an event in the festival, so I'm very much dealing with that kind of stuff. In terms of the watching, yes, I do watch the submissions, but we currently have 2 head programmers, and then we have a 8-person committee that are watching submissions as well. So that's 8, 9, 10. So it's 11 people watching the films that are coming in. And at the moment, I'm spending quite a lot of time watching submissions because there's quite a lot to get through. And then we have regular meetings on Zoom because, again, post-COVID, everyone's a bit spread out in various parts of the country. And we have one of our head programmers is in Berlin, one of our selection committees in Chicago. So yeah, it's kind of the days of being in an office together working is kind of long gone, really, which is fine. So yeah, I think that answers the question about what I do. Was there another part to the question?
No, it was quite a general one around the nature of your work and the day-to-day running of it. I'm mindful that people will have questions, so I'd rather let them speak. We have a roving mic, so immediately the hands have shot up.
Thank you. Hi. I have a question for you both, really. I wondered about the technical process of watching the films. So do you have to have 2 programmers watch it necessarily? So you have, you then narrow it down, or how does it work for both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I've kind of learned, and when I speak on a lot of panels, is that there's no rules in how you run a film festival. You kind of just make up what's best for you or how you think it should be done. For shorts, no, we don't. I mean, it would be very luxurious to have 2 people to watch every film, but everyone gets paid, and we don't have those kind of budgets to bring on endless programmers. So we have to be quite strict that if every film gets watched once, if it gets rejected at that stage by that one person, it doesn't get watched again. They will put maybes through for a second watch or yeses through for a second watch. But I know festivals, I had a meeting with a festival recently that has, they have 8 viewers on every single short film. But then I said, do you pay all these people? And it's like, oh no, they're all volunteers. And it's like, so yeah, different festivals do it in different ways. And yeah, maybe.
Yes, and indeed, like this year we used to work with paid pre-selectors, and we went through way fewer watches per film, but now this year we have been collaborating with a number of universities with the film departments. So we are offering internships to film students, and obviously, it's a very big take, and hopefully we do give something back to them. And as Philip said, it is very much assigning a chunk of films, I say, 50 features because, or I don't know, 100 shorts or whatever, to a person, and have a sit down with them and talk about what we need from a film, what is their view on a film. So it is a constant conversation, and then when they are done, and they come forward with the recommendations, again, there's a lot of dialogue. So yeah, and then those recommendations get watched by myself and my 2 colleagues, who are the artistic directors, and we sort of decide amongst our 3. But yeah, I think we had about So like for the feature programming team, we had about 10 to 15 pre-selectors this year, plus, obviously the three of myself and my two colleagues. And then in the shorts department, it will be 3 senior programmers and then about, again, like 5 or 6 pre-selectors. Yeah, so it's a well-oiled machine, I guess.
Yeah, so another question about selection, really. So when you submit your short film or feature film, I guess, to festivals, often it will ask or give you it'll be optional sometimes, I suppose, for a director's statement or press materials and stuff. Is any of that stuff important, or does the film speak for itself?
I'm very much about the film speaking for itself. Again, it's slightly different with shorts and features, I think, because, well, I mean, you can talk about the feature side of things, but I think with shorts, doing short film programming for the various festivals I've worked on, it's you just want to see what's on the screen when you press play. I mean, we use Film Freeway, and there is an option to give a statement, a letter. Yeah, obviously, it's good to read a synopsis. It's good to see what the director's done. When I used to do LFF, they didn't use a platform like Film Freeway. They just used to download all the links and then send us an Excel sheet. So we didn't have any information with what was coming through in terms of what the film was. So, it is still, yeah. So with shorts, it's what's on the screen when you press play. That's the most important thing.
I guess it's, of course, it's the film speaking for itself. But then if one is uncertain by what they are seeing on screen, they might, like while watching the film, like go and scroll through. So what has this person done and their statement and read, and then maybe they warm up to them more, and maybe they see, okay, so this is what I'm watching. And again, as Philip said, like because like with a feature, like you can't afford those 3 minutes to kind of like click around while you watch the film. So I would say it's better to have it than not, and it's better to have everything presented very nicely, very tightly, and especially, like it's very good to, like, not forget if you have been accepted to any other festivals, your stills have to be nicely packaged. Everything has to be nice and tidy and brief and punchy. So I think, that is the biggest takeaway. It's not necessary that a programmer is going to take anything of that into account, but it's better that it's there than not.
Great, that's very helpful. Cheers.
Hi. One's like a practical question, which is it worth following up if you just submit your thing to like through one of those engines, and like is it worth kind of following up and saying, oh, considering you have hundreds of things to look through, does it make a difference? No. Okay, cool. Good to know. And the other question is
follow up.
Cool. Good to know. And the other question is I liked it.
It is not useful. I think sometimes, if the film is great, I guess, and like you have already watched it, and like they get in touch with you, you're a little bit more excited about talking to them because it might be a film that gets selected, but it's more often than not someone that will not get selected, and this is why they are so, they lack confidence and they want to present themselves, and it's just it adds work. We don't have time, as as with any other job. But
do you mean follow up when you've sent the film, or when you get if you get a rejection?
Oh no, when you've sent it, not when you've got a rejection.
Yeah, I mean, I do get a lot of emails and people saying I've entered my film,
okay, and
you can respond and say thanks. That's
well,
all
yes,
you can really.
Yeah, I know.
But you're right, it takes time to
okay,
to do that. Yeah, so it's not
okay,
really necessary because everything's going to get watched.
The other question is, I like what you said about being pretentious or not pretentious. Can you define pretentious, and what's the most pretentious film you've liked?
Oh God, that depends on the programmer, and I think like pretentious taste.
No, you as a programmer.
Ah, God. Well, here we go. But the most pretentious thing I love. I like loads of pretentious stuff, but I don't think I program many pretentious stuff. So I used to work for Genesis, and that was my platform to go crazy. So I did go crazy. I think I developed quite an audience for.
Can you define pretentious?
Pretentious. Very well. So I guess people would say Tarkovsky maybe is pretentious, but to me he isn't. So I'm very big into observational documentary. That not much happens. It's extremely slow. Again, I have to fight with my colleagues to push stuff like that into the program. They're not up for it. I have to really put on a fight. So it's it's really up to to the person, I guess. Raindance is a more indie, vibrant, fun festival for filmmakers to experiment with the first, second features. It's not kind of nothing established, like very heavy-handed goes in there. But what is pretentious? It's there's no answer to that. There is no answer to that.
I haven't really got anything to add. It's not a word I'd use. You used it, not me.
I used it. I'm sorry. Misleading.
What do you think are the most common issues you get with submissions? You mentioned earlier that a lot of films are submitted that aren't necessarily the right fit. Is that very common, or are there other more technical stuff?
I mean, for shorts, very few films are bad. I mean, technically, hardly any. Everything looks great. Everything looks polished. Everything looks well made. But also everything looks really bland, and that's the problem. Certainly with shorts, it's the majority of work that we get is drama, and that's the most uninteresting part of the when you watch the films, because there are just so many dramas, like thousands. Not to say that we're not showing drama, but we really are having to look for stuff that really stands out, that's really trying something different. Because I talk on panels a lot about this whole idea of sort of EastEnders short films, where it's kind of a family drama in a room with some actors, and everything's nicely lit and everything looks great and the acting's okay and the script is good, but what's this film doing? It's not really doing anything, that we haven't seen thousands and thousands of times before. But yeah, it's that eternal question, what are we looking for? We don't know until we see it. But yeah, I think so. That's a big thing that there is so much of this kind of quite bland drama, which is also film schools are quite guilty of as well, because that's great that those filmmakers and students are learning the craft, but they're not really making films that are that interesting. I mean, I'm sure they'll some of the bigger film schools, they'll all get jobs in the industry, which is great, which is important for those film schools and for those students that work on those films, but the films themselves aren't particularly that interesting. But I don't know if you've got anything to add about it.
I think, what we want is to be surprised, as, Philip kind of very well put on. We want to be surprised pleasantly. Unfortunately, with features, with submissions of features, we very much avoid what was just described, but in the feature format. However, with features, somehow there are way more people that don't really consider experimenting with a short first, and they feel so confident that they venture into a feature straight away. And I have to watch that, and that is very interesting, to say the least. Everything is out of whack. Some budget, no budget, or even big budget. It's a game of ego, and some, as famously as I guess, you might know that, some directors have quite huge egos, and that is necessary for a masterpiece, but that is unfortunately sometimes necessary for a disaster too. So, the confidence leads people to go ahead and make a feature, even though they're not able to direct, they're not able to keep the timing between the actors, to direct the cinematographer to a nice shot, to keep the script nice and tight, to be mindful of when to stop. So yeah, there's loads of disasters, absolutely loads of disasters. like to stuff I watch, loads.
Because there are those directors that haven't made a short, but they're very few and far between. But people use those people as an example, like Ben Wheatley, who never made a short. His first film was a feature, and it was very successful.
Haneke, I think, hasn't.
Right, he would. No, I didn't know that.
No, I don't think he has.
But I think with Ben Wheatley, they had money which they could have made a short. I've seen him talk about this, and they thought, well, we've got this amount of money, why don't we just make a feature instead? And obviously for him, that was very successful, and it worked. But this was,
it's the exception
15
to the rule,
years ago, and
that's
it's one person.
To the rule,
yeah.
Thank you. I guess my question's mainly to do with shorts, because that's where I'm at the minute. I also program at Slam Dance, and the way we do it there's everyone's kind of equal, and then you can, if you've watched enough, you're allowed into deliberations. And I find a lot of the discussion ends up, when it comes to programming, as well as content, it ends up being time, like how long your film is. Is there an ideal kind of short film length for you guys?
As I said, we have the 45 limit cutoff. We don't really... I mean, yeah, that sort of eternal question about how long a short should be. I mean, it's as long as it needs to be. We do show slightly longer films if we think they're going to fit the program. The longer the film, the bigger chunk it is within the program. But if a film's strong, then we'll program. We had a program at the last festival in January that had 3 shorts in it, which I was a bit concerned about, because each one was half an hour long, and I thought, well, who's going to come? But it did actually do quite well. A couple of them were quite high profile. One had been in Sundance. The other was a documentary about the actress Maria Schneider. It's like an experimental documentary by quite a well-known artist, filmmaker. So that sort of got the audience interested in these 3 films. But yeah, it's hard with longer films how they do fit into the program. How many programmers does Slam Dance have?
They don't tell us how many, but basically, if you've watched, they say each film will be watched twice.
Okay.
We watch it through a thing called Ocean Bluff, and if you've watched over 200, in the shorts at least, if you've watched over 200, then you're allowed into the deliberations, and each deliberation has a captain, but the captain doesn't have any more sway than, he just kind of like runs it. But everyone's got an equal vote onto what goes into the program. So if you kind of sway everyone in the room, then your film gets in, kind of thing. So there's not like a... Because
Sundance only has the 4 programmers. They don't work with pre-selectors.
And they're all equal. Slam Dance.
Slam Dance, but we're saying Sundance is crazy because they get 9,000 shorts and there's only 4 people watching them.
Yeah.
I mean, and they only select... They don't even select that many for Sundance. Maybe 20 films, 30 films.
I think that's what Slam Dance is hoping for, get all the good stuff that they don't put in. But yeah.
But also, I wanted to add to your question that I've been working with a filmmaker who is currently having her festival run. She's got a short at Holy Shorts. Hence Jesus. Yes. So she's in Holy Shorts, and she kind of a colleague of mine said that I am not going to pick this because it's stalls there. I told her, she cut it, and now she's screening in good festivals. So there you go. So it's not about the time per se. It's about whether the film is good or not. And about being self-aware as a filmmaker and getting the feedback of other people seriously.
Hi, I just wanted to know if you could clarify what you just last said. Did she edit her short and then...
Yes, so she had started submitting it to festivals at an X length, and then after the feedback, she did cut it.
What was the original length?
17 minutes, and I think she only chopped off a couple of minutes.
Wow.
So it wasn't much, but it was enough to make it punchier.
Thank you. And then my real question was, you mentioned you used university students as pre-selectors. Which universities do you outreach with?
Oh, at the moment it was SOAS, Glasgow, Birkbeck, South Bank. I believe those are the ones.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about genre or genre trends, really, because it hasn't really been mentioned in terms of features, but in terms of short, I heard drama, I heard experimental. I was wondering how you both felt about trends and whether that was something you thought about when you were programming. Like, I think there's a lot of horror around at the moment, for example, and whether that's something you'd want.
I mean, with London Short Film Festival, we have a set of genre programs that we do every year, which we've been doing pretty much since we started, which is a sort of midnight movies, an opening night comedy program, which is quite weird because we're not really known for comedy as a festival, but it always works quite well having some fun films to kick off the festival. So when you're programming, when you're viewing, you've kind of got those genre programs in mind, and there's a few other sort of programs that we revisit every year, like a London themed program, or I can't even think what the others are. There's about 6 or 7, but then all the other programs are very much programmed out of discussion, you know, what we're seeing coming through, etc., and what works together, you know, as a program and a program sort of hook. So yeah, we do have those genre programs. But yeah, I mean, there's always been horror short films. There's always been comedy short films. I mean, in terms of horror, one of the things that's sort of come about the last few years would be what you would probably call folk horror, which you know, there's a lot of those kind of more darker gothic kind of stories,
which is the best
being told, yeah, which is more interesting than out and out kind of gore and yeah. So that's something that
that's
we're
why
always
Ben Wheatley
interested
never
in.
made a short, probably.
Sorry?
That's why Ben Wheatley never made a short. He knew folk horror was where it was at.
So yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you.
But no, I guess from my side, I think, you know, that, well, we don't program according to genre. At the moment, we are, the festival is happening end of October, so some horror is required. So some horror or some fantasy, some fairy tale, something magical. I don't know, some kind of creature will creep up in the program, as it's customary. But other than that, I think we're just trying to keep it as light and fun as possible, because it's much harder to find light and fun films than the aforementioned drama. So, you know, the aim is to laugh, but, you know, I guess what you do mostly is cry at the end.
Hi, so I know you said you don't know what you're looking for until you find it, but would you say generally, do you lean more towards films that have a very clear meaning, that are saying something, or films that are maybe more abstract and more mysterious?
Abstract and mysterious sounds good, rather than saying something. I quite like a film where you don't really know what's going on, but you're drawn in. I was always a big fan, and I've showed it to a lot of students, of the Neil Carrier film Beat with Ben Whishaw, which I always show as a good example of a film that is really powerful and really strong, even though we have literally no idea what's going on, and we still don't after the film's finished. Interestingly, he did turn it into a feature called Surge, I think, a few years.
Surge is superb. Yeah.
Really? I wasn't so keen on Surge because it explained everything. With the short, it kept it sort of quite sort of obscure, but it drew you in. I suppose, you know, that kind of similar to what David Lynch does in the feature world, where you get drawn into a scenario even though you're not sure exactly what is happening on the screen. I mean, there's quite a lot of us programming on the festival, so everyone's got different ideas. But, you know, you want to have a good diversity of voices from, you know, we're an international festival, so from around the world. So in that sense, you know, you are looking for stuff that you wouldn't normally see in, you know, that's some of the research we do, because with submissions, yeah, we've got loads of films coming from America, we've got loads of films coming from across Europe, but, we might have out of 5,000 films, 4 films from Brazil, and you watch them and they're great. And it's like, well, why aren't we getting more films from Brazil? Because we want to see those films. So you kind of have to reach out a little bit. And we've done some work with the British Council to get films from the Far East, because it's not a region that we get many films from, or from the African regions, Central Africa. So then there are people making films in those areas, but not sending them to festivals in the UK. So I think, in that sense, every program should have a good mix of different voices and different people behind the camera and in front of the camera.
And behind the program, ideally.
And behind the program, yeah.
Not much to add there. I guess I'll just shoot myself in the foot again, and bring up the pretentious versus non-pretentious here, right? Because as Philip said, it's very much he would rather something more abstract and Lynchian or what have you. And I know that some of my colleagues would like something with a very with a narrative, with a clear narrative, with really great characters, with a really great punchline, and so on and so forth. So so it's absolutely it's definitely up to the programmer. It's definitely up to the programmer, and it's definitely up to how how strong the film is and how the film communicates with you and with your lived experiences, with what you want, if you had a good day or not, and so on and so forth.
But in terms of those filmmakers that I've seen come up through the festival in 20 years, and moving on to features and getting stuff out into the cinemas, it's interesting. Filmmakers that we've had really good relationships with is someone like Mark Jenkin, who was a big fan of his early shorts, and screened a lot of his work before he did Bait and then Ennis Men, and then from the very early days we were always very big fans of Andrea Arnold, because the first ever festival that we put on in 2004, we screened Wasp, which literally about a month later won the Oscar for Best Short, which is quite a weird film for winning an Oscar because it's quite experimental. It's not usually I don't know if people have seen it, but it's a strong short film. So yeah, and then someone like Anil Carrier, we've always been a big champion of his work, his short films. So yeah, but I'm trying to think of filmmakers that we've never shown work of that have gone on to do big things. I can't think off the top of my head. I'll think while we're talking.
Hi. So it's a slightly more personal angle to it. I mean, it's quite something to give your time and attention to watching thousands, maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of films, many of which...
Lifetime, not a year.
you might not even enjoy many of them, yet you give your attention generously to them. What is it that drew you into doing the work and being where you are now? And what is it that keeps you there? What's the best part of the job?
I mean, I fell into this. I mean, we can talk a little bit about how we got into our jobs. I mean, I was brought up in London. I didn't go on to university. But I had friends that went to art college, to Camberwell, to Goldsmiths. So, I was getting into a lot of stuff, music. I was in a band, was trying to do a bit of photography. Me and my friend from school, he'd gone on to do graphics at Middlesex, and I remember we started making short films together. He bought a 16mm Bolex. We tried to make music videos for friends' bands. So it's this thing about you don't really know that when you're as a teenager or your early 20s, you're trying to find your way, as it were. So with these short films that we were making, they were just for fun for ourselves. Obviously, we knew nothing about festivals, knew nothing about where you could screen them. I mean, it's just no one tells you this stuff. But back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, there was Time Out magazine, which some of you may remember, had listings where it listed film clubs. And there was this one that was basically these guys that called themselves Exploding Cinema. They're still around. They have nights at the Cinema Museum. And they'd been running these open access film nights where you could just turn up with your film and show it. So back then we went down with a couple of these short films on VHS tapes to this pub in Camberwell and said, oh, can we show these films? But it was a bit of a light bulb moment because we're in this pub. It was packed out, people watching films, people going up on stage, talking about their films. It was a great atmosphere, really inspiring. So me and my friend Tim, rather than continue making films because they weren't very good, we thought we could start a film club. So that's what we did. We started this film club, and there was a bit of an explosion of film clubs at that time in the late 90s in alternative spaces across London. So the film club that I ran had the really awful name of the Halloween Society, which was kind of just a name, like you form a band, you come up with a name, you put on a club night, you come up with a name. But the Halloween Society did start doing really well, as did some of these other clubs. And we ran this night in the late 90s and early 2000s in this venue next door to the Prince Charles Cinema called Notre Dame Hall, which is still there. I think it's called Leicester Square Theatre now. But back then it was a church hall under the church, because there is a church next door to the Prince Charles Cinema, which some of you may not have even seen, but it's there. And there's a church hall underneath. So we were running these nights with live music, with DJs, with visuals, with short films. And that's when I kind of knew this is working. This is what I want to do with my life. So then we come into the 2000s and I was doing bits of programming at music festivals. Was a bit involved when Latitude first set up in the film tent there. And then the idea of running a short film festival sort of came out of that. So I'd been doing these club nights at the ICA for a couple of years, and it was head of cinema there, Jane Giles, who's actually going to be at the BFI tomorrow night because she's doing a Q&A with the director of Variety, and she's just directed this documentary which is coming out later this year on the Scala Cinema, which some of you may know, which was again very important to me growing up in London. I used to go to the Scala, as did Christopher Nolan and Peter Strickland and many other filmmakers. So she was head of cinema at the ICA and said, why don't you guys start a short film festival? So that was kind of the roots of doing it, because there wasn't one in London at the time. So it went from this 4-day thing at the ICA to 20 years later, what it is now. But my friend Kate, who I started it with, Kate Taylor, she's also moved through the industry. So she was at LFF for a while, and she's just been appointed as the new artistic director at the Edinburgh Film Festival, which is on next weekend. So I'm going up to that. She was working on the festival last year. That was a really long roundabout way of my life. But it was kind of organic. Kind of how I got into
what
this.
What keeps you going? You haven't.
I just like watching films. So, as I said, I'll be at the BFI watching Variety tomorrow night, and I see, as many new releases as I can at the cinema, and go to the BFI a lot and see older films. Blah blah blah. It's just enjoying watching films.
Same for you, I imagine.
My turn. Huh?
Same for you, I imagine.
Very much so. Yeah. Obviously, the trajectory was different, but I was born in Ukraine. As the old union was going down, then the whole single parent household. Mom moved to Greece to work and get us immigrated to America. That was the plan. That never worked out. She met someone really lovely and took me to Greece when I was about 7 years old from Ukraine. So I immigrated with her. And as an immigrant child, I guess, I experienced the whole lot. And growing up, I immersed myself into the Greek society, forgetting all about my trauma. Meanwhile, my family situation, with mom, was going a bit to shambles, and I found myself at 15 living on my own with loads of free time and a house to myself. Nothing bad happened other than watching Lars von Trier on repeat. But it was a point of my life when I was just like, my friends were my family, and they were all into black metal, like grindcore, and I was just really jealous because I was the only girl in the group, and I wasn't playing any instruments, or didn't have the interest to, and I was just very fond of all genres that were presented to me, and I thought that I was so lame that I didn't have any hobbies or any interests. But lo and behold, I was there, showing them Salo or showing them, whatever have you. And they're like, whoa, this is cool. And some were there, I guess, like when you consume 5 films a day while still going to school and having a normal life, it's like, okay, this is my thing. This is my black metal. So I did go to film school. I thought that I didn't know what I was going to do. I just, thought I was going to starve to death, and that was that. But that was fine with that. And then I realized that film programming was a thing. I was running a pub in Borough, the Roebuck, and I started running film nights. Movie Mondays, I called them. And it's just like little thematic community cinema nights once a week. So that was great. So that was like my first real connection to it, post-university, post-theoretical film studies. And yeah, then after that, I kind of, this is it. You need to do it. You need to work your butt off and make it happen. And then I was just working 40 hours a week at the pub, and then other 40 hours I was doing internships and volunteering everywhere I could find to be able to make it. And then after 1 year I got my job at Genesis Cinema, and that was the next 5 years of my life. So I guess that's that. It's just there's nothing else that would make me happy.
It's interesting that you also came out of running a film club, because that is where we're quite similar, and it's interesting that there are quite a lot.
You realise that that's a thing, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly, because when we started the club, we didn't have any idea about festivals. And as I said, when we were doing the events, they were not in cinemas, they were in club spaces, bars and alternative spaces. It wasn't till I actually started the festival at the ICA we thought, oh, this is amazing, you could show films in a cinema, because we'd never done it before. They'd always been in these spaces where you'd put screens up or projectors up, and I still have a big belief in those alternative spaces. And at London Short Film Festival, we've used lots of different venues. We had an event last festival in Fold nightclub in Canning Town, which we're going to be using that again this year.
I remember you had that lovely Begotten screening in the Begotten,
at the Moth Club.
In the Moth Club, years ago.
Yeah,
so good.
Up in Hackney. So yeah, I mean it's. But yeah, it was interesting at that time, because when we were doing these film nights, we did decide with some of the other film groups to put on an alternative underground film festival. It was called Volcano, and we did hear about the fact that the London Film Festival, because it's an explosion of the underground. So everyone put their own nights on at their venues over the same week period. So there was Omsk, there was Exploding Cinema. And these people are still around. There was Stephen Eastwood, who ran Omsk. He's made a number of features. He had a documentary feature out a few years ago called Ireland, which was about... it's quite a depressing film about death. But anyway, it got released and it was out. But he's also head of film at Queen Mary. And then there's My Eyes, who have also just started up again.
I did screen that in Genesis.
Stephen's
the
film,
Irish,
Ireland.
the Irish, the deathbed.
And My Eyes are starting to do nights again down at. I thought they might have done stuff at the Roebuck, but they show short films and anyway, blah blah blah.
But at the Roebuck, when I left, then Eri Philly, who is a programmer at the Garden Cinema, took over, and she created the Emerging Filmmakers Night at the Roebuck.
Yeah. Yeah, but with Volcano, we actually did a sort of we kind of went down to the press the morning of the London Film Festival with all these banners saying "Down with the London Film Festival, come to the Underground. And off the back of that, we got a 2-page piece in Time Out magazine, and all the events were, you know, sold out. There was events in clubs in Shoreditch and squatted places in King's Cross. And I mean, it's interesting with London Short Film Festival because, you know, I'm always looking for what other events are going on in London, and which is why we've worked with Tape Collective, with Zodiac Film Club, who we did an event here with, Otherness Archive, Club de Femme. These are all sort of collectives and film nights that have sort of started in more recent years, and I'm always interested to see who's, you know, what's happening in that sort of more alternative
And it's, I
spaces.
guess, you know, it's collaboration is key. Whatever you do, you need to feed off each other, and yeah, it's when you collaborate, something beautiful comes out.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, so that's the idea behind these events as well, getting people to collaborate and meet each other.
Thank you for your time. I'm going to keep it right here. Really brief, with 2 really brief questions. The first is, do you know what the average budgets are for the shorts and the features? Do you do metrics and look at that kind of thing at all? No. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No,
I mean,
no.
we no.
0 to a lot.
I had no idea. I'm not. I mean, I said I made films, but these were sort of, you know, stuff shot in an afternoon. I don't know anything about budgeting short films or feature films. It's not anything. No idea.
Thank you. And the second one is, following on from an earlier question, does stuff, or what percentage of stuff gets rejected due to just technical things in the application? Maybe.
Oh, nothing
not
in the
even
application.
Okay.
No, I mean, as I said, a lot of the time we're not really reading what's coming with the film, other than checking the synopsis or maybe seeing what else the director's done or if the film's screened anywhere else. So no, I mean, no, we don't. I mean, nothing's looked at that much in detail in terms of supporting
It's just
material.
all technical to do with the film.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you know, we can show more lower budget work that might not be technically that good anyway. We have a whole program of low budget films within the festival, which are always really good fun screenings, you know, where the work's a bit more hit and miss and a bit sort of, you know, yeah.
Rough and ready.
Rough and ready, that's the word I was looking for.
Hello, just wanted to ask Philip mostly because he's been running London Short Film Festival for 20 years. At what point were you able to quit your side gigs and work only for the festival?
I mean, that sort of also relates a bit to my life, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's no denying that I think you have to have a little bit of privilege to be in the film industry. As I said, I grew up in London. I was born in Lewisham and I grew up in Lewisham. And I only moved from that house in Lewisham in 2019. So it was my family house that I grew up in with my parents. And they owned it. So, you know, I was very lucky to have that kind of support from them. And they weren't particularly, you know, rich people. They just had a shop, you know, in Catford, in Hither Green, selling building materials. Wasn't like, but I think, yeah, it's to have that support from them has obviously enabled me to do what I want to do with my life. And I think the fact that my dad, you know, had his own business that he started up himself, you know, they're from sort of East End of London, working class family. You know, he saw that in me, that, oh, you want to do your own thing. So he was very supportive of that. So yeah, I did struggle to make a living doing film programming. But it's interesting because I mentioned earlier that I worked on East End Film Festival and Jersey Broncage Festival, it was called. And both of those festivals at that time were really heavily funded. And I was doing London Short Film Festival, you know, it was earlier days for London Short Film Festival, so it was more in my spare time. So at those festivals, I actually had paid job where I'd go every day to the office and work on programming for the festival. But as I said earlier, they both folded because funding was lost. And that was, so in that sense, I know that I've managed to sort of do something that maybe isn't that easy if you would have had to have survived on paying London rents. And because my jobs before, I worked for my dad in his building business. I did a lot of temp work in around London, and again, I was quite lucky with temping, because I did temp at the British Council for a while, and again, just through an agency, I was doing admin work in their accounts department of all things for a couple of years, which was awful. But then this job came up in films department round about the time that me and my friend had started the film club. And again, it was just a temp job, an admin job, sort of posting, films to festivals. And that was where I started to learn about, the festival scene, and working at the British Council Films Department for a couple of years, just in this sort of minor admin-y kind of role. So I think, that now I am able to continue working on London Short Film Festival full time, because I don't have these big, London rents and having to survive the way many other people do. So, I know I'm lucky in that sense.
After watching so many films, is there any way that you would sum up or giving advices, suggestion, recommendations, or comments on the majority of the submissions? To put it more straightforward, if you watch something you think it's, this is so boring, or this is kind of bad, in what way they're bad?
It could be in many different ways. It could be so much.
How long have you got? Yeah.
I think we only have a couple of minutes. I'll be brief. Acting could be dreadful. The subject could be overdone, so much, not bad, just done. I've seen, and I don't mean ill to anyone, but I have seen about 3 or 4 films from Israel this year of Russian immigrants coming of age, that are going back to Russia to find the roots, reconnect. 3 or 4 films, all really well produced. Am I gonna show all 4 of them? No, I'm not gonna show any of them because it's just not original. So just be original, be bold, be original, be yourself. And I know that these people probably were themselves, and some of the films were really enjoyable. It was amazing, but it was just it didn't work. It didn't work for the festival. So be out there. I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. No.
So this is like a pretty broad question. You guys can take it however you want. AI. Greta Gerwig made $1 billion, and film criticism. We've got Rotten Tomatoes and TikTok. How do you guys factor that into how you run your festivals?
Sorry, say that again. AI.
ChatGPT. Creating fake scripts. Greta Gerwig, indie darling, just made $1 billion on a Barbie movie. And then, what was the third one I just said? Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes and TikTok, the industrialization of film criticism.
I don't think I can answer that.
Do you think about that at all?
No, not at all. I haven't thought about it. Well, interestingly, we are actually trying to get a meeting with TikTok in terms of sponsorship, because they do support festivals. They support the London Film Festival. What that partnership would be, I don't know. Weirdly,
they make short films. You support short films.
Yeah,
surely
exactly. Yeah. I mean, in the whole, we actually did an AI program back in January, because there's a curator, Ben Robinson's got another guy that runs his own events called Alt Kino. He pitched an AI program to us, which then went up to the Glasgow Short Film Festival, and he expanded it and did 2 programs up there for that festival. But that was kind of like a curated program of short films that related to AI, and then he did a sort of discussion about it afterwards. So no, I mean, I haven't really had any thoughts about it beyond that.
But if the film is good, it doesn't matter if AI wrote it. If it's been it doesn't matter. It doesn't. I mean, you know, like
kudos,
you guys
as curators. I'm asking,
kudos to the people that, you know, commanded the AI to make it, and he made it so well. Kudos.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, I want to ask, do you think, you obviously see a lot of good films in the festival, do you think they all succeed commercially afterwards? Do you think when you like a film, people see those films, or there's a lot of films that you just think, well, that was great, but it's not going to be able to reach audiences?
I mean, this is for you, really, because short films don't have any commercial.
Yeah, it's true. It's, very little commercial value. But, it's, no matter how good a film might be, it might do a festival run, and it might just work as a platform for the filmmaker to get more funding, more government funding, or more sponsorship to make his next film, rather than having any commercial value whatsoever. You don't go into indie film with that mindset, I don't think.
So I think you're not happy with the way indie films are reaching audiences in the industry.
No. No, and I think that's a hell no. And I dare saying that I speak from the whole industry. So no.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Barbie, because obviously
exactly.
Greta
No,
Gerwig,
the industry suffers. It's like your
Greta
film.
Gerwig has very much come from indie background and that whole mumblecore thing, which
that is what I meant a little bit. Like, do you guys feel sometimes you're offering up these indie directors on a platter to be consumed by the industry?
No, we're just a platform. We're just we're just a London
industry takes
platform.
care of itself afterwards.
We are just a London platform. We endeavor to reach audiences, and I think this is are we doing another question? One last question.
Philip, one for you, and I can't remember if you went online or not in the last couple of years, but it sounds to me like there's a lot of filmmakers in here. So did you go online?
Yeah, it was a bit of a disaster. I mean, obviously, when COVID hit, we'd just had our festival. So we had a festival in January 2020. No one really knew what COVID was in January 2020. And obviously by March, we were all in lockdown. So, those festivals that jumped on the online platform, this is what you're talking about particularly.
I'm talking about festivals where there's kind of like a bit of especially with international content, where there's a bit of a pressure now to carry on being like a dual festival, having your in-person and then having your online component. So this was related to what I was talking to. So we did go. So a lot of festivals that went online straight away were quite successful, because people were kind of quite sort of like, we're in this new world. We're sitting in our flats. By January 2022. When was COVID? 2020. So by January 2021, when we did our online festival, because we were still in that sort of post-Christmas lockdown, was pretty disastrous. We had no audience. We tried and tried. We did it wrong. We gave people too short a time to watch the films, blah, blah, blah. So moving forward out of that, to look into the following festival in January 2022, there was this whole thing that would be hybrid. But then as the year went on, clearly this wasn't going to happen, because it's like running two film festivals, and we don't have the budget and we don't have the staff to do that. So as it got closer, we made a decision to cut the online part of it completely and to go fully physical, and then get very stressed out because there was all these rumors of another lockdown in January 2022, which luckily didn't happen. And we went fully physical, and it was fine. I mean, we did really well that year, even though somewhere like Encounters Short Film Festival had done 2 fully online festivals. Because I did think at the time that, this is quite exciting, because it makes the festival more accessible. It makes the festival more, people don't have to come to London, or if they're not able to come to the cinemas for whatever reason. But then speaking to festivals that did do hybrids, it didn't really go very well, and they were getting quite small audiences for their online part of the festival.
People crave in person. But I
still think there's something there that could be looked at a later date, that we could do more of a hybrid thing if it becomes a bit cheaper and easier. But it's just not possible with the budgets that we have.
We're going to wrap up because I think we've pushed our hour to the absolute limit, but you are all obviously welcome to hang about in the bar, chat to each other, chat to our two guests if they're happy to stay a bit longer. And I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much, Christina and Philip, for giving us your time and expertise. It's really, really invaluable.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And just to say, this is going to probably be a regular thing. So if you guys, as our members, want to suggest a theme, something that you're curious about, that you'd like to find out more about, and people you'd like us to invite, then feel free to let us know. Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks to my colleagues as well.